Meanwhile, Europe has been hit with a surge in the number of COVID-19 infections. At least 5 countries have reported the highest surge in the number of cases and also in the death rates. And all of these happen to be European nations. And this, of course, has cast a cloud over the holiday season celebrations towards the end of this year. So let's start with the situation in France. Remember, France, even in the first and the second waves, had been hammered during the COVID-19 pandemic. And France has now announced some pretty tight COVID-19 restrictions from the 3rd of January onwards. Employees will have to work from home and public gatherings will be limited to just about 2,000 people, even for indoor events. Officials have warned that hospitals are at the risk of being overwhelmed. A record high of nearly about 100,000 cases has been reported in the country this week amidst a surge that's been led by the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. This is the highest number of infections that have been reported in France since the beginning of the pandemic nearly 2 years ago. More than 3,000 people at this point of time are in intensive care units with conditions linked to COVID-19 surpassing the crisis threshold. Several crisis measures are under consideration, which includes a restriction of the health pass issued by France, a curfew on New Year's Eve, and also a nationwide mask mandate. Some health workers also want the government to postpone the winter holidays for the children. And officials have been urging people not to hold parties or large family gatherings for the holidays. And nearly about 22 million people out of an eligible 40 million have received COVID booster shots in France so far. Now, Denmark's total number of infections has exceeded 15,000 for the first time. This happens to be the world's highest infection rate, with more than 1,500 cases having been reported for every 100,000 people. Unlike France, hospital admissions have ever remained below the level that was witnessed in the last wave of COVID-19 infections. Denmark is also taking some pretty important steps. It has shut down its cultural attractions, and it has limited the hours for people to access bars and restaurants and discotheques. Earlier this week, 77.6% of the population was fully vaccinated in the last released government data. 35% of all citizens have received the 3rd dose of the booster shot in the country.
There is no doubt that Europe once again is the epicenter of the global pandemic. The top 10 countries with the highest mortality are in Europe and Central Asia. Last week, we had 27,000 extra COVID-19 deaths, 2.6 million new infections last week, which is 40% higher than the same period last year. And now we have Omicron taking over. The good news is, because it's important to give people the hope, there is optimism, we know what to do.
Another Nordic region which has shown very low infection rates in the past was Iceland, but Iceland has registered a record of 672 cases over the course of the last 24 hours. The country has a population of just 366,000 people. That's about 3.6 lakh people, and has never reported more than 200 cases of infections on a day-to-day basis until this month. And during last year's wave in the month of autumn season, the infections in Iceland had never exceeded 100 on a day-to-day basis. Meanwhile, Greece has announced fresh restrictions from the beginning of January next year, mainly targeting nighttime entertainment and sporting venues. Under the new measures, high protection masks will be compulsory for people who want to access supermarkets, public transport and other eating establishments such as bars, restaurants and even discotheques. Restaurants will have to shut by midnight, and no standing customers at entertainment venues will be allowed. There will also be a maximum limit of 6 people per table. And new COVID-19 infections have surged to a record high of nearly about 9,000 cases in just the last 24 hours. 66 deaths have been reported according to the Health Ministry in the last 24 hours. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.